There we go. Everyone come on in, have a seat. We'll be starting in just a few minutes. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to everyone joining us on our live stream. Welcome to the Ethical Society of St. Louis. Whether you are here in person or online, you are part of this community, and we are glad you're here. My name is Kyle Nienhaus, and my pronouns are he, him. I'm the volunteer host for Platform today. So that our program is not interrupted, please check your devices and make sure they're turned off or muted. Thank you. To begin our gathering today, please welcome Home Remedy performing an original music song this morning called Hearts.
Ship going down in the drifting debris. Reach for a lifeboat you can feel but not see, while your hands slip and grab an invisible rail. Lurching and stumbling, afraid you will fail. Find your sure footing, our bond certainty. Your heart is part me. I can lose my good way in a forest of paths, thrash in the thorns and then drown in mud baths. In the thicket of darkness, scared and alone, feel our connection and touch a smooth stone, beating like a bird wings, wild as bamboo. My heart is part you. When weary weariness pulls all the leaves from your tree, when ashes are piled where great oak should be, remember your heart is part me. You can walk life's insanity, find it in flames, contain an inferno with scavenger games, panes of glass broken in blackened attire. Call on your carpenters, hammer this fire, like fixing the windows and opening doors. My heart is part yours. When you run from the burning of all that you knew, when cinders and smoke blur your mind and your view, remember my heart is part you. I can skid from the glaciers and ice of despair, seeing my breath and yet gasping for air. Freezing to frozen, I'll search for your hand and skate from the Arctic to stretch for warm land, while the wind chills between us hush and unkind. Your heart is part mine. When weariness pulls all the leaves from your tree, when ashes are piled where great oak should be, remember your heart is part me. When you run from the burning of all that you knew, when cinders and smoke blur your mind and your view, remember my heart is part you. Remember your heart is part me.
Thank you. What a sound. The ethical education core values are relevant to all our lives. During the school year, we ask a young member of our community to read them and remind us of our shared commitments. Since the SEEK program is on summer break, I will read them today. Every person is important and unique. Every person deserves to be treated fairly and kindly. I can learn from everyone. I'm part of this earth. I cherish it and all the life upon it. I learn from the world around me by using my senses, mind, and feelings. I'm a member of the world community, which depends on cooperation of all people for peace and justice. I can learn from the past to build for the future. I'm free to question. I'm free to choose what I believe. I accept responsibility for my choices and actions, and I strive to live my values. Thanks. Opening words is an opportunity for members to speak about something that is important to them or that they wish to share with our congregation, and it is our chance to get to know our members better. Today, Alan Easton will be offering opening words.
Thank you. I'm Alan Easton, and I'm going to talk about my participation in a reading circle called Finding Connections. This group meets here at the Society weekly after platform down at 12:30, and the group spun off from a study circle that had been started by Gabriel Requat. He was an intern who was here at the Society during his studies at Eden Seminary. And I want to thank the other participants in this reading group in Finding Connections for their excellent suggestions of books to read. And what I want to share with you today is some reactions I made to 4 of the books. And in these particular books, I want to pose the question, is America good or is it wicked? First, I want to present the perspective of Thomas King, a Native American raconteur. The group read 2 of his books, and in the first one, titled The Truth About Stories, he asserts stories are wondrous things, and they are dangerous. He recounts the tale from Genesis, which has a single creator, you know who, hierarchy, order and law, and after the fall, war. And he compares that creation myth to a Native American creation myth, which has multiple creators, cooperation, equality, and balance, not at all like the Genesis story. King ponders the influence that these creation stories have on the societies that tell them. He warns, once you've heard a story, you may not live your life different, or you may live your life differently. In his other book, The Inconvenient Indian, Thomas King recounts in detail the history of the broken treaties and the forced removals of native peoples in North America. He wrote, quote, "One of the surprising things about Indians is that we're still here. After some 500 years of vigorous encouragement to assimilate or disappear, we're still here. What do Indians want?" he says. Some of them want their land back. He wrote, quote, "Land has been the defining element of Aboriginal culture. Land is home." But he says the more important question is, what do whites want? Land. Whites want land, he said. And stepping back from that, I wonder, how could European settlers, citing Lincoln's noble words, have brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal? How could they have done that if they hadn't killed and corralled the Indians? In the third book, the theme of empire is developed. This is Walter Johnson's book, The Broken Heart of America, which includes, in addition to the Indian eradication, the abominable treatment that whites meted out to blacks. Johnson tells us that before the Civil War, there were people known as free soilers. They opposed the expansion of slavery, arguing, quote, that the West should be white man's country, unquote. And I confess that I thought, well, of course they did. They weren't going to trust the Indians and the blacks to build their nation. But not all contempt and violence in our history was directed toward non-whites. In her book titled White Trash, Nancy Eisenberg argues that the class system of England was imported into this country. The upper class looked on those white people who did not work the land, who showed no ambition, and who were sickly, as not just trashy people, but literally as trash. She cited many pejorative terms for them used by politicians and journalists over the last 4 centuries. And then she said, white's trash was rescued from contempt by 2 great men that rose from their ranks, Elvis Presley and former President Lyndon Johnson. Where are the white trash today, I wonder? I never hear the expression anymore, and I guess they're still with us, but journalists and politicians apply their pejoratives elsewhere. In spite of these grisly facts of our history, I hold to my belief that America is one of mankind's greatest creations. With its system of laws and its burgeoning economy, it has raised the quality of life for its people and for the world's people beyond what past generations could have imagined. Even as we absorb the critiques of America, we must not forget its staggering successes. So which of these stories do we tell about the creation and history of America? Choose carefully. As Thomas King cautioned, stories are wondrous and they are dangerous. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. We would love to hear from you, so members are encouraged to reach out if you're interested in delivering opening words. You can contact Amy Miller or Andy Jackson. She's sitting right down there. Please welcome Home Remedy back for our second musical selection, Ordinary Days.
Dinner on the front porch. We'll grab the TV trays, creak out in the barnyard, persimmons down the lane, kickball with my buddies, just until it's dark. Bunched up socks in Dad's boots for snowy layered walks. Take my hand and we'll run the fields together. Take my hand and we'll climb the highest tree. Run with me and we'll gather all the memories. Peace in the simple. We'll wander life's maze. We'll find each other in the ordinary days. Tiny toes and fingers change the way we see, reaching arms wide open, embracing family, swinging in the backyard, gerbils, fish, and cats. On the kitchen counter with her plastic bowls for hats. Take my hand and we'll run the fields together. Take my hand and we'll climb the highest tree. Run with me and we'll gather all the memories. Peace in the simple. We'll wander life's maze. We'll find each other in the ordinary days. Ordinary people, ordinary ways, everyday moments savored yesterdays. Funny how the time flies, rushing through the years, made of tiny moments, gratitude and tears. So many songs unwritten, so many left to sing, reaching arms wide open to all that life will bring. Take my hand and we'll run the fields together. Take my hand and we'll climb the highest tree. Run with me and we'll gather all the memories. Peace in the simple. We'll wander life's maze. We'll find each other in the ordinary days. In the ordinary days. In the ordinary days.
Thank you again. Claire, thanks for bringing your mom here. Meditation and mindfulness have been shown to benefit focus, introspection, and emotional regulation. Before we begin our main address, I invite you to sit comfortably and take several deep, slow breaths for 1 minute to clear your mind and body. Thank you. Our speaker today for the third week of Members Speak Month grew up in St. Louis County and then lived overseas in Germany, Lebanon, and then Thailand for most of the next 2 decades. During that time, she had 2 children, left the Mormon church, and completed 2 master's degrees. After returning to the St. Louis area, she became a member of the Ethical Society and restarted the Religious Transition Peer Support Group that meets in the building every Monday at 7 p.m. Please join me in welcoming Ethical Society member Mary Ann Perkins.
Good morning, everyone. What great music. Can we have another round of applause? I'm a huge fan of the core values, and I just want to mention that. I don't know whether they have the same impact on everyone, but the first time I sat in this room and heard those values, I thought, this is a totally different way to look at the world. Yeah. And I'd also like to thank Alan for opening words. Alan is one of the first people that I met when I started turning up here regularly as my daughter's chauffeur in 2021. I don't know how many of you know that. When I first started attending here, it was to bring my kid. I thought, if I don't like it, I'll go to Starbucks. And I liked it. It's nice. So anyway, I'm very happy to be here today, and thank you for being here. And to the people online watching, thank you. Thank you for watching. The invitation to speak came a few months back. So this moment, this one right now, has been on my mind for a while. It was on my mind, in fact, as I was planning my trip to Tanzania while I was on the mountain, and every day since I got back 2 months ago. Kilamanjaro is a special place. It's notable for being the highest point in Africa and the tallest freestanding mountain on Earth. It's also the sort of summit you can reach on foot, without ropes or grappling hooks, without any kind of technical mountaineering ability. This might be why I always felt Kilimanjaro was within reach. I want to start with a few disclaimers, because there are some elephants in the room to acknowledge. First, I'm aware of the vanity involved, both in doing this hike and in talking about it in a forum like this one. Also, it's totally valid to wonder why I and my daughter, a mother-daughter duo from Baldwin, wound up at the summit of Kilamanjaro. There's no need to go to Africa to find mountains to climb, plus there are plenty of perfectly fine and challenging hikes around here. And it's not like I exhausted my options closer to home first. I didn't. If I'm being totally honest here, I'm not actually that into hiking. I mean, it's okay. I like it, but I'm not evangelical about it. In fact, some stuff about hiking, it makes me laugh. Like, oh my gosh, this guy, fear not. Look at him with his cell phone. Like, what is this about? Is it about your Instagram? Okay, the next one, this one. Make sure you can see how insignificant I am. Like, it's, Okay, and then this one, yeah. You don't need to hike to live a fulfilling life. I'm with them, right? Like, I'm at home with this. I definitely, for sure, believe you can have a fulfilling life without hiking. And don't get me started on camping. Oh my gosh. I mean, I'll go if there's snacks and if my friends are going, but like one overnight is plenty. And I had been on the trek to the summit of Kilimanjaro for 2 or 3 days when I realized that it was basically a 6-night camping trip without electricity and no running water and like some hiking and an overnight to the summit. Like, that's what it was. 6-day camping trip. So, yeah, you might be wondering, like, maybe my daughter roped me into it. But no, it wasn't like that. She's even less into hiking and camping than I am. After her somewhat exotic and ill-advised upbringing abroad, she prefers normal things, and I respect that. But she is a good sport, a fun co-conspirator, and an excellent travel buddy. Like me, she dives into things before considering that they might not work out. So we get each other. Also, this wasn't some sort of like mother-daughter bonding thing, or a last hurrah before she flew the coop. It just seemed like something we could do, and I thought it would be fun. Since returning from Tanzania, I've put some effort into figuring out how to talk about this experience. I knew it was life-changing even as it was happening. And I'm speaking not as an expert or a representative of anything, but as a person about my own experience. I'll try to link my ideas to the bigger picture of being human on this planet, since I know I'm not the only one with this ambivalent feeling about hiking and camping. And I hope you see yourself in some of what I share today. So, Kilamanjaro. Tanzania is in the southern hemisphere, in sub-Saharan Africa, just south of Kenya and north of Mozambique. It has almost 900 miles of coastline. Just offshore is Zanzibar, the island where Freddie Mercury was born. So, in the circle is actually Kilamanjaro, and you can kind of just barely see Zanzibar offshore. Tanzania has stunning beaches and coral reefs that are crowded with life. And Kilamanjaro has been recognized as a national park, along with other notable places like Serengeti National Park, Mount Meru. You might think tourism is the main industry in Tanzania, but it's agriculture. Riding in taxis between destinations, I saw endless cultivation, and the climate's ideal to grow crops year-round. Tanzania is pretty far away, but Bangkok's farther. And it's much easier and cheaper and faster to get to Bangkok. And that's because we transit between international hubs. This works against Tanzania and other African countries. People there have a much greater difficulty reaching the rest of the world. It's slower and harder and more expensive. We in St. Louis, flyover country, we experience a small dose of this hardship. So small, in fact, that I'm already embarrassed that I drew this comparison. Tanzania is not a wealthy country. It would be wrong to omit that from my remarks today. Human existence is deeply unequal. The daily living conditions for most people in Tanzania are profoundly different from ours, but those conditions are not unusual globally. They're just unusual to us. Tanzania is among the countries in the so-called bottom billion, the 1.33 billion people who collectively account for about 5% of global GDP. And in this illustration behind me, they're the yellow slice. That 1.33 billion, another way to look at that is this way. The tiny little green sliver at the bottom. We have a really unequal world. Inequality can be hard to grasp. What does it really mean? Every year, the UN produces an index ranking of 191 countries, aggregating economic, social, and health indicators. It's called the Human Development Index. Tanzania is the yellow line, pretty close to the bottom. Then Thailand in the middle for reference, and then we're the blue line at the top. And in practical terms, what does that mean? Well, it means that challenges in Tanzania are unfamiliar to us. There are few paved roads. Most children will not finish formal secondary education. Healthcare is quite basic, if it can be accessed at all. Half of Tanzanian women will give birth before they reach age 20. In our country, it's 17 per 1,000 20-year-old women. There's no guarantee of access to clean water or improved sanitation. And that's what it takes to avoid having contact with human waste, like hygienic sanitation. Consider for a moment the cumulative toll of these conditions on human health and well-being. Average life expectancy is 8 years shorter in Tanzania than it is here in Missouri, and I think we all know that we're bad for the US, right? Our life expectancy is low compared to the states around us. Again, the challenges in Tanzania are unfamiliar here, but they're not unusual globally. I'm focusing on inequality because I think it matters. Some of what is utterly normal in Tanzania would cause a riot here, and vice versa. Appreciating the differences, sitting with the apparent incongruities and contradictions, that is how we come to know ourselves. It helps us to get to the heart of the human condition and what it might take for the human family to flourish. And I have to thank Kyle for this word of flourishing. I love this idea of human flourishing. Of course, before leaving town, I read the State Department's travel advisory for Tanzania. It warns tourists about being robbed, scammed, abducted, and held for ransom. I'll admit that after reading the warning, I felt a bit spooked, but the feeling passed. That is because I have some experience living in countries with State Department travel advisories, and what I've learned is that certainty is largely imaginary. And if you let uncertainty stop you, you will never do anything. I want to thank Louise Jett and Brian Maynard for these images. They posted them on Facebook, kind of at about the same time, but separately. And I just love them in combination. So the tiny little slice, that is what we know. And the smaller, or the smallish, slightly larger slice, that's what you are aware you don't know. And the vast majority of the pie, you don't know you don't know. You just don't even know you don't know it. And this other quote, man, if you can learn to sit with an unclear picture and to not force the things that you encounter into what already makes sense to you, what you've already encountered, you'll have a more accurate picture of yourself, of the world. So Danielle and I didn't attempt to reach the summit of Kilamanjaro because we were sure. I wasn't sure about anything. We were heading into many, many unknowns. It was our first time in Tanzania and Africa, first time in the Southern Hemisphere, first time hiking above 14,000 feet, first time going 6 days without a shower. There was no guarantee it would go well. So even though I've been there myself, there's still a lot that I don't know about Kilamanjaro, but I'd like to share some of what I experienced. The summit rises 19,300 feet above sea level. That's roughly half the commercial airline cruising altitude, and it's 30 times the height of the St. Louis Arch. Our route is the red line on this, crossed through 5 ecological zones to reach the summit. Ascending the mountain, we saw the ecosystem transform again and again, from jungle in the foothills to montana forest, and then moorlands, and then alpine desert, and finally stone scree and glaciers at the summit. That block of 8 images, it's showing the vanishing of the glaciers over the past century. Day upon day, I saw that these zones had little in common with each other. Each had a certain profile of resources: oxygen and carbon dioxide, moisture, sunlight, canopy, nutrients, temperature ranges. And in each zone, life reflected the resources of the environment. Things live and grow where they can, and what thrives in one zone dies in another. And to be honest, we humans, we were not thriving in most of those zones. We had to constantly adapt. We were switching between sun hats and ski caps and adding and removing layers of clothing, transitioning from thick ski gloves to thin gloves to no gloves. Items that offered critical protection in one environment were useless or even harmful in another. It would have been much harder to survive in any of those ecosystems without our guides, Ezekiel and Hallelujah. What a great name. Each night after dinner, we had a briefing about the next day's trek. They told us what gear we would need and the specific conditions we'd encounter. They made sure we were well prepared for the environment. The burden of adaptation was entirely on us hikers as visitors to a special place that deserves to be protected and preserved. Kilimanjaro doesn't and shouldn't concern itself with providing a more conducive user experience. And as I've thought about thriving and suffering, I've had this cartoon in my mind a lot. It's this traumatized koala clinging to a stump of a tree, and the one person says to the other, "This young koala has a mental health problem." And it's just woefully inadequate to pin everything on the koala's mental health when it has been abandoned and its environment has been decimated. I mean, that young koala probably does need grief counseling and therapy, but how about an environment that wasn't obliterated? How about a community support network? We all interact with and live in a variety of environments. We suit ourselves to them, or we shape them to suit us. And it's probably some combination of the two in this environment at the Ethical Society. We are constantly co-creating this space. I think we have to honestly assess what thrives or suffers here and accept responsibility for it as we assess our environment. And if we don't like what we find, we will have to change it so that it cultivates and sustains a different kind of thriving. I've mentioned our guides, Ezekiel and Hallelujah, and I'd like to explain that nobody climbs Kilimanjaro without a guide, and porters, and a cook, and a waiter. I remember feeling annoyed when I first learned that I had to hire porters to carry my things and a cook to prepare meals. It seemed downright princessy, colonial even, but now I know better. During our 7 days and 6 nights on the mountain, I gained a deep appreciation for our support crew. Our group of 3 tourists was supported by a 12-man crew. There they are. Our support crew set up and broke down camp, cooked, served, and washed up after every meal, fetched and purified water from streams, refilled our water bottles, and carried all of our baggage from one campsite to the next. Most mornings, Ezekiel, the head guide, sent us tourists onward with Hallelujah, the assistant guide, while the crew broke camp. Our support crew moved up the mountain much faster than we could, and by the time we reached our next campsite, they had already set up our tents. Tea was waiting for us, and the only task for us was to rest. So this is actually, that's our waiter. They were all so nice. Our guides were by our side every step of the way, reminding us to breathe deeply, to walk pole pole, it's the Swahili for slowly, slowly, drink lots of water, rest, eat. And that was because we didn't know what we were doing. This was unusual for us, wasn't unusual for them. Ezekiel had 16 years of experience. I'm missing a couple pages. Ezekiel had taken hundreds of people like us up the mountain. And because of that, they knew what we needed. They knew what we needed to avoid. And day by day, they taught us how to manage ourselves in every environment we encountered on the mountain. Given the physical and psychological challenges of reaching the summit, I know now that there's nothing princessy about being supported. You have to be either crazy or an elite mountaineer to attempt this climb without the help of guides and a crew. And that's why it's not allowed to do it by yourself. Kilimanjaro is only one mountain. It's the same mountain for everyone, but no two people climbing it will have the same experience. No one on the mountain has the same backstory. We all had our own expectations. We had different levels of fitness, preparation, and experience, different capacities to adapt to the altitude, and different tolerances for the monotony and even boredom of doing the same repetitive motion for 5 to 8 hours a day, day after day. So I want to talk about that, about what Danielle and I brought to the mountain. Experience can put a person in a position of power. And there's no doubt that our experience on Kilimanjaro would have been totally different if we had never climbed a mountain before. They say anything worth doing is worth doing badly the first time. And I think Danielle and I proved that to be true. First times are incredibly valuable. They level set, they create a baseline, a template. We sight off them and we triangulate around them. Our first mountain was Kinabalu, rising 13,400 feet above the island of Borneo. The pictures of Kinabalu on Instagram looked amazing, and we knew a family that had climbed it with a son younger than Danielle. She was 14 back then. So I signed us up. We were living in Bangkok at the time, February 2020, and Borneo was just a short plane ride away. There were news reports about a virus in China, but nothing was locked down, so we went. And I didn't really prepare or train. I didn't think I had to. I didn't pay for a porter to carry my pack. It wasn't compulsory. And Danielle and I split a pair of trekking poles. I figured one would be enough. I didn't think we needed altitude medication, so we didn't have any. And when my toes began to hurt, I didn't think it would be worth it to stop to change my socks. And I thought if I descended the mountain slowly enough, it would probably be okay. I was wrong about all of those things. The hike was incredibly challenging. I simply wasn't prepared for it. I was carrying too much weight, and I didn't know how to use the trekking poles. I wore blisters on my toes that were still there 2 weeks later. Danielle really struggled with the altitude. I had no idea that coming down from the summit would be so challenging. I thought the hard part was going up, but I could barely walk by the end of it. Recovering from that mountain was like recovering from my first marathon. And after that, we chose to climb another mountain. Yeah. I need to advance these slides. No, not yet. Though it was incredibly difficult, what we experienced reaching the summit of Kinabalu eclipsed every hardship we endured. The summit transformed Danielle. Going up the mountain, she complained nonstop about the thin air. But at the summit, she was 100% confidence and smiles. We had done it. For me, the moment I'll never forget was when we finally emerged above the tree line, and I looked out over a sea of clouds below us, reflecting the light of a sky crowded with stars. Millions of points of light that had always been there, but that I had never seen before, not even once in my whole life. And I didn't even know what I had been missing until I learned it standing on the mountain in stunned silence. It was a clarifying moment, one that reminded me of an earlier clarifying moment when I became a mom. I felt linked to millennia's worth of women who had done what I had just done. We modern people, with our electric lights and polluted atmosphere, we are among the few humans who have ever lived on this planet without an everyday familiarity with the stars. I can say that it felt special, it felt important, and it felt wonderfully human to be there. Of course we would climb another mountain, and we would do it having learned a lot from our first time. We began talking about Kilamanjaro before we had even recovered from Kinabalu. That experience, despite or maybe because of all of our mistakes, made us infinitely more capable of reaching every other summit we ever attempt. It was in the shadow of this experience that I began training months in advance of attempting Kilamanjaro, that I took Lindsay's advice and got altitude medication, that I relied fastidiously on 2 trekking poles every step of the way and proactively protected my knees. And this memory was close at hand as I felt euphoric during the 5 hours overnight hike to reach the summit near dawn. It was freezing, it was windy and dark, but all I had to do was turn my head to see the Milky Way, the moon like a smile in the sky, and infinite stars. I wouldn't have traded it for anything. The thing I missed the most while I was on the mountain was my daily writing ritual. Without electricity, internet, or my phone, my mind often returned home to little troubles I hadn't fully resolved, things like bills to pay, how or whether to respond to a weird message from someone I used to know, or chores I'd left undone. It took me a while to realize that I was homesick. I missed my morning coffee. I missed my street and my neighborhood. I simply missed my life. While I was on the mountain, I tried very hard to be mindful of where I was, to be mentally present where I was physically. I did not sleep well on the mountain, not even once. I hate camping. And after a few sleepless nights, I began fantasizing about my bed at home, how the sheets felt, how soft it was. This didn't help me sleep any better, but it felt good to remember it, to remind myself that there was such a thing as comfort, and to look forward to sleeping comfortably again. It helped me cope with the brief time I was without it. One night when I couldn't sleep, I decided to take myself on a mental tour of my condo. I imagined walking through my own front door. I turned my attention to each wall and window and door, each painting and photograph, every piece of furniture, with as much precision as I could muster. I felt the reality of its comfort, stability, and beauty. I hadn't been in that sort of headspace about my condo ever before. I had been renovating it, and my tendency was to see everything that I hadn't done yet. And it felt so good to feel only appreciation. I loved tackling the challenge of Kilamanjaro, and it felt so good to come home at the end of the journey and see that it had turned out okay. We took a leap into the void, and we soared. And you know what? Returning from this trip felt so good because I was ready to come home. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ann. That was lovely. It's great to hear from so many new members, and I see a lot of new faces recently. All right, where are we at here? Collections and announcements. The welcome team will now take up a collection. If you are moved to make a donation today, we appreciate anything you may be able to offer. Like all nonprofit organizations, we rely on the generosity of our members and friends to ensure our community can keep providing our many free programs. If you don't have cash with you today and you feel inclined, you can donate at ethicalstl.org/donate or use the QR code on the screen now. All right. All right. Oh gosh. Oh geez.
It's me, not you.
Oh, I was going to say. That's never happened before. If you are interested in becoming a member of the Ethical Society, our membership and program manager is Courtney Scott Camarada. She is here today and can answer your questions about membership or programming. Also, her email is on the back of your program. Meanwhile, we would love to keep you informed about future events at the Ethical Society of St. Louis. If you'd like to join our weekly newsletter, use the QR code above me to sign up. You can also sign up on our website under the heading Follow Us Online. Let's see here. Announcements. Let's see, for announcements for most things that happen at the Society come through email. If you have signed up and are not receiving the emails, please reach out to Nancy Jelenic in the main office to ensure you're on the distribution list. So announcements, we have a reminder that the fall gathering will be held September 10th directly after platform until 2 p.m. And also that local honey today is being sold in the Becker Room downstairs. All proceeds will go to the International Institute to benefit immigrants from Ukraine and other countries. We will now have our final musical selection from Home Remedy entitled Hold On.
Love is love, we got the right to marry. Our borders are open to our friends in need. Love is love, not childish and petty. Following truth, rejecting greed. Gotta hold on, things will get better. Hold on when you know that it's wrong. Hold on, reach for your neighbor. Community makes us strong.
Community makes us strong.
Where is love? Oh, where is compassion? We're building a wall to lock in hate. Chipping away at so much progress. Don't take us back, don't make us wait. We gotta hold on, things will get better. Hold on when you know that it's wrong. Hold on, reach for your neighbor. Community makes us strong.
Community makes us strong.
Tell the world we won't go away. Resist the words of untruth. Not one more trick, not one more slap, not one more lie. Hold on, things will get better. Hold on when you know that it's wrong. Hold on, reach for your neighbor. Community makes us strong.
Community makes us strong.
Give us you're tired, you're poor, and you're hungry. We'll raise a light for all to see. Rise up with all of your yearning. Home of the brave and land of the free. You've gotta hold on, things will get better. Hold on when you know that it's wrong. Hold on, reach for your neighbor. Community makes us strong.
Community makes us strong.
Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on.
That's great stuff. I'm glad to see you'll be performing with us a lot in the future. Thank you all for being here today. Please stick around after platform for coffee hour downstairs in the Becker Room. If you are new to the Ethical Society, just follow the crowd downstairs using the stairs or elevator. Visitors are also invited to check out the Visitors Connect table for more information about the Ethical Society. We hope today's gathering helped you feel more connected to other people, gave you new and interesting ideas, and inspired you to think about the values which guide your life. To end our program, I invite you to greet those on either side of you if you like, and I will see you all next week. Thank you.